Since 1976, the Amigos de Bolsa Chica have been committed to protecting our local wetlands and serving our community. Since the founding of our FLOW program, we have served thousands of students, educators, and the community at large by offering free naturalist guided tours, hands-on education programs, as well as other volunteer activities. For that reason, we've decided to offer alternative methods of serving our community, including this video that you're watching right now. Today we'll learn about the Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve, but first let's go over safety when visiting Bolsa Chica. Please remember to maintain social distancing while on the trails of Bolsa Chica. Some of our trails are wide enough to allow a 6-foot distance between yourself and others. Some trails, however, are more narrow, and it is common courtesy to step aside and allow others to pass, or you can avoid these trails and stick to the wider path. Please wear a mask at all times, making sure both your mouth and nose are covered. Dogs are not allowed at the Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve, whether or not they're on a leash, as they disturb the wildlife. Remember, this is an ecological reserve, not a park. Please hold on to all trash until you get to a waste receptacle at the parking lots. Any trash left on the ground has an effect on the wildlife. Please remember to stick to the trails and do not trample any of the plants. Remember, this is a home for these plants and animals, and we want to protect our wild spaces as best we can. Now you're ready to experience Bolsa Chica in a safe and respectful way. Let's get to the video.
Hi, my name is Jen and we're at the Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve here in Huntington Beach, California. Today, you and I are going to be learning about the plants and animals that call this place home.
Hey Jen, my name is Amber and I'm the Amigos de Bolsa Chica FLOW Program Manager. You guys ready to go? Awesome.
So for starters, what exactly is the Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve?
Bolsa Chica is a 1,200-acre coastal wetland, and this is a special and increasingly rare area. Most wetlands along our coast have been turned into harbors or marinas, or even housing developments. Although it may not look very important at first glance, I invite you to take a closer look. Bolsa Chica provides open space and trails for people to walk, to observe, and to enjoy nature, which also makes it a great outdoor laboratory for scientists and educators. The wetland ecosystem purifies and filters water and provides sediment traps and erosion control during times of heavy rain. It also serves as a nursery for fish. Up to 50% of all commercial fish species spend some point of their lives in coastal marshes because they were protected from the ocean waves and from predators. It provides habitat for migrating, wintering, and breeding birds. Bolsa Chica is also a stopping point on the Pacific Flyway, and since there are fewer stopping points, the birds need the ones that are left, and therefore restoration is very important. Bolsa Chica also provides food and home for endangered species. All of this makes Bolsa Chica a natural repository for many native birds, plants, and animals, which helps to preserve California's biodiversity. And in terms of photosynthesis and the production of oxygen, all of those ingredients make Bolsa Chica as productive, or even more so, as a tropical rainforest.
That's very interesting. So there are definitely some plants here, but it doesn't look like enough to put the same amount of oxygen as a rainforest.
That's a great observation, Jen. Our climate here in Southern California is definitely too dry for a rainforest. And it is true Bolsa Chica doesn't cover as vast amounts of land like it used to. But this location provides some unique ingredients that make wetlands like Bolsa Chica extremely productive. There are many elements that go into a healthy ecosystem, both living and non-living. The prominent non-living parts of the Bolsa Chica wetlands are the sun, saltwater, freshwater, air, and mud. The mud is composed of soil carried into the marsh by rainfall draining off of the upland slopes, and something that's called detritus, which is decaying plant material. When the salt marsh plants shed their leaves, layers and layers of decomposing organic material accumulate, and that is detritus. That detritus is composed mainly from carbon, and the soils and plant root systems hold onto the carbon in massive amounts. When the wetlands are disturbed, say someone comes in and develops it into a neighborhood, then that stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere and further accelerates climate change. It is critical to keep plant carbon sequestered in its original state in the mud. The living parts of Bolsa Chica include birds, fish, invertebrates, and plants. Of these components, the plants are the most important to the ecosystem. They are called primary producers because they can make their own food from carbon dioxide and water, using the sun's energy. This process is called photosynthesis, and one important byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen, And this is the main reason why the salt marsh here is as productive as a rainforest, because it isn't only the plants that we see that produce oxygen. Phytoplankton are microscopic plant-like organisms in the water that rely on photosynthesis, taking in carbon dioxide and producing oxygen just like larger plants. In fact, phytoplankton are critical to life on Earth and produce up to half of the oxygen that we breathe. This is where the food chain, or the flow of energy, starts. Plants and phytoplankton convert sunlight and carbon dioxide into energy. Phytoplankton, algae, and the bacteria produced by the detritus feeds amphipods, copepods, jellyfish, shrimp, worms, clams, mussels, and small fish. These in turn are eaten by many species of birds and larger fish. The larger fish are eaten by other birds and people too. Every plant and every creature has a role in the chain. All of the interactions between them mean that Bolsa Chica has a tremendous amount of biodiversity. In addition to all the salt-tolerant plants and phytoplankton, there is another very abundant plant in Bolsa Chica called eelgrass, which grows in the shallow tidal water. This plant adds nutrients to the system, including oxygen, and because Bolsa Chica's waters are protected from the ocean waves and currents, it shelters many species of growing fish, just like a nursery.
So from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of fish here too?
Yes, actually. Coastal wetlands are nursery grounds for commercial fish. Half of all the fish that we eat spend part of their lives here. They are dependent upon the eelgrass, the calm and nutrient-rich water, and the food that they find here before they can venture out into the ocean. These fish include bass, corbina, anchovies, mullet, and halibut.
That's really cool. So tell me more about the other creatures you mentioned living in Bolsa Chica's water.
If you're standing on the walk bridge, some of the aquatic creatures you may see include several members of the shark family, including the leopard shark or the shovel-nosed guitarfish. You might also see several types of rays, including the common stingray. At the water's edge, you may find many species of invertebrates like crabs, clams, snails, mussels, and oysters. In deeper water, you might find shrimp, or see a two-spot octopus, or a California sea hare. Sometimes we'll even spot sea lions and green sea turtles in Bolsa Chica's waters.
Someone told me that there were dinosaurs here. How is that possible?
In a sense, yes, there are. While all the dinosaurs as we know them perished 66 million years ago, one tiny branch of the dinosaur family survived, and that's birds. Starting with only a few species of birds, those that survived the mass extinction responded to their changing environments and over millions of years adapted into countless shapes and sizes to fill almost every kind of habitat on Earth. There are now 10,000 species of birds on Earth, and every bird has different adaptations that allow them to survive and to move around when their food sources move. Birds that live in the salt marsh here are especially adapted to eat the fish, crustaceans, and aquatic plants that live in the water, and the invertebrates that live in the mud. The more birds you see means the more food there is for them and the healthier that habitat is.
Well, there are definitely a lot of birds here at Bolsa Chica. What kind of birds live here now?
We actually get over 200 bird species at Bolsa Chica throughout the year. A lot of birds live here all year long, wading birds like herons and egrets, and birds of prey like falcons and osprey, and the Canada goose as well. But we also get a lot of migratory birds. Bolsa Chica is an important stop on the Pacific Flyway, which is a migration pathway between Alaska and Canada, down along the coast of the Pacific Ocean to South America. There are many species of ducks and shorebirds that raise their young far to the north and arrive here in Bolsa Chica in the fall and then return north in the winter. Some birds, like swallows and terns, spend their winters in Central and South America where it is warm, and then arrive at Bolsa Chica in the spring to raise their young. All of these birds travel huge distances to find healthy habitats that provide the food that they need and the places they need to raise their young. There are also a few species of endangered birds here at Bolsa Chica. There are not very many of these birds because their habitats have been developed by people. This means that they don't have access to the natural resources they would need to survive. These birds include the least tern, which likes to nest in open and sandy areas like beaches, Belding savanna sparrow, which nests only in pickleweed, and Ridgway's rail, which feeds and nests only in the salt marsh amongst the cordgrass. Only 10% of California's coastal wetlands remain. The rest have become farms, harbors, marinas, and beachfront houses, meaning that these species are struggling to survive. But there are some success stories too. The brown pelican and the peregrine falcon almost became extinct when a pesticide called DDT worked its way into the food chain and caused their eggshells to become too thin and the eggs to break when the parents tried to incubate them. But when the government banned the pesticide, the birds' numbers gradually increased, and we can thank the Endangered Species Act for saving them.
Can you tell me more about the plants we're seeing? Are all of these native?
Yes, most of the plants here are native, except for a few weeds you might see among the perimeter of Bolsa Chica. These plants here are all uniquely adapted to the salt marsh ecosystem and will only be found in similar conditions. While the land may look pretty flat here, the daily fluctuation of the tides creates very distinct areas for different communities of plants. The marine zone, where you'd find eelgrass like we talked about earlier, is always underwater no matter the tide. The next zone is the coastal salt marsh. This zone gets submerged twice a day by the rising tides and then drains as the tide recedes. Plant species in this community must adapt to different amounts of water and salinity depending on where they are located along the gradual slope of the marsh. Those in the lower regions are especially challenged because they must adapt to soils which have a high concentration of salt, are poorly drained, and have little to no air. The most common plants here are cordgrass, pickleweed, and saltwort. Cordgrass has developed a regulatory system by excreting extra salt out of its leaves. Pickleweed is able to concentrate salt into the tips of its stems and then drops those stems to the ground before it regrows them. The next zone is the coastal strand that you might see along the trail next to Pacific Coast Highway. This is an area of flowering plants that live along the shore in loose, shifting sand above the high tide line. These plants are subjected to daily salt spray, strong winds, and intense sunlight at various times of the year. Plants in this community must adapt to salty soils with low nutrients and very little water. In fact, most of these plants get their water from the fog that rolls in off the ocean at night. And the last zone is the coastal sage scrub. This is the zone that you see up on the mesa, and most of these plants are drought deciduous, meaning that they lose their leaves and look dormant or dead during the hotter summer months. When we have cool, rainy weather during the winter, they sprout new leaves and flowers.
Well, thank you so much, Amber, for showing us around the Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve. I had no idea there was so much going on. It's really cool to learn about what's going on beneath the surface, but just how everything is connected.
Yeah, and thank you so much for joining me. And thank you guys. If you're interested in learning more, if you want to explore with us in person, visit us online at amigosdebolsachica.org or follow us on Facebook and Instagram. See ya.